ahead.
Okay. Our mission. Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and allow for open dialogue. Attendance today at this meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Irene, and welcome everybody. Make sure that you put any questions that you'd like to ask Becky in the chat box as well while she's speaking. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce her. Becky Austill-Clausen discovered that she could communicate with her brother who transitioned in 1995, even though she had no psychic or spiritual awareness before his passage. Becky is an occupational therapist who thoroughly explored the afterlife for 20 years before she sold her large business and gained the courage to share her experiences in the award-winning book, Changemaker: How My Brother's Death Woke Up My Life. During her journey of discovery, Becky became a Reiki master and teaches Reiki to medical professionals and the general public in one-day workshops. Reiki provides self-healing and facilitates after-death communication. Becky presents empowering after-death communication training nationwide, including 2019 workshops at Lilydale Assembly and the International Association of Near-Death Studies annual conference. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Becky Austill-Clausen.
Hi, everybody. And I'm going to, let's see, share my, do I have permission to share the screen?
I believe you should, but let's see. Good question, because we took it off. Let me, I'm going to make you a co-host. There you go.
Okay.
So now you can.
All right. How's that? Is that okay? Can everybody
Perfect.
see the screen? And all right, great. I am so pleased to be here. Elizabeth, thank you so very much for moving me up on the schedule after I had talked to Brian, and it's just magnificent to be here. I'm quite thrilled. So thank you very much, and I appreciate Brian setting me up on this. Lilia Samoilo, which many of you may know, and Craig Mahone, who's the producer of the Life to Afterlife series, is the one that set us up. So what I'd like to do is to present a little overview of what happened with me when I learned how to talk with my brother who passed. And then I'm going to give you some techniques to facilitate you communicating with your child who has transitioned. And I'm going to end with some of the support services I provide and other people provide as well. And at this point, I wanted to say I'm very sorry that we are having this conversation. I'm sending you all the deepest love and sympathy I can for the fact that your child is transitioned. It's a hard road to follow. And so thank you very much for being present and using the wonderful resources that Helping Parents Heal has. So let me set the stage for you. This is in the early 1990s, and I was walking along the beach. You're going to hear a Boston accent for the next bit of time. So I'm originally from Boston. I live right outside of the Philadelphia region. But every year, our family would get together at Cape Cod. And so I was walking with my brother on Coast Guard National Seashore. And David came out that he was gay, about 10 years prior to this. And this was the early 1990s. And it reminds me of the time of the COVID production we're having right now, because everybody was dying of AIDS. Thousands of people were dying of AIDS. And so I just casually asked David, we're walking on the beach, hey, David, have you been tested for AIDS? And he turned away. And it was the longest 10 seconds of my life, because I fully expected him to say, yes, I'm fine. And he did not say that. And he turned back and he said, I'm HIV positive. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, it goes into AIDS. And at that point of our life, everybody that had AIDS died. And I asked him about his medical care, and he said he was getting the best medical care possible in Boston. And I said, what can I do to help? And he said, Becky, please don't tell anybody. I don't want to be treated any differently. And he said, I'm taking great precautions, and please don't tell anyone, including your husband. And so I had no support system, unlike the support system that you all have at Helping Parents Heal. And so what happened was I found myself at the Barnes & Noble bookstore in Pennsylvania, and I feel like I was guided there by spirit. And I went to the New Age section. Now, I'm a science-based occupational therapist. I didn't even know the name New Age, but there I was, and I started to read all sorts of books on the afterlife. And so it was really quite interesting that I probably read about 300 books, seriously, before David passed. And when my brother passed, he was aware that there was a chance that we could continue to live. Neither one of us had even contemplated that concept until he passed. And so it's an important concept that we do want to believe, and we know this, that we can communicate with our loved ones that had passed on. We need to believe that it's possible. I finally got the call that David was very sick and he was in the hospital. And this is about 3 years after he and I had been walking on the beach, and he shared that he had HIV. And I went to the hospital, and the physician said, your brother's probably going to pass tonight. And I got permission from the hospital to stay in the room with him because I didn't want him to die alone. I went to bed. They put up a little cot right beside David's bed, and I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I looked at David, and he's lying flat on his back, and he was on a ventilator at the time. And I don't know if you've seen ventilators, but it's a very mechanical way of breathing. It's a and there was absolutely no soul, no spirit, no energy. I didn't know any of those words. I just felt that David wasn't there. And so it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and my parents lived about 20 minutes away. And I thought, I could go back to my parents' house, but what am I going to say? Well, David's body is still there, but it just didn't seem like he was present. And so I looked around the room, and David had a few crystals. His friend Lorene had brought them into the hospital room. And I took one of David's crystals. It was a clear quartz crystal. And then his friend Edward had passed about 6 months ago. And I took Edward's crystal, and I pulled up a chair right beside David's bed. He had his left hand out on the side of the bed. And I took his hand in mine, and I had the 2 crystals in my hand, and I clasped my hand around his and closed my eyes. And what I saw is this image that you can see on the screen. And I had never seen this animal before. It was swimming in the ocean, and it looked like a big fat dolphin. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is that? And I looked at its eyes, and it had beautiful brown eyes, and the eyes started to grow bigger and bigger and bigger in a very lovely way. And I realized this animal had my brother's eyes. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is my brother David. Somehow he had transformed into this animal swimming in the ocean. And the animal very slowly started to swim very gently towards me. And it went inside me, and I had the most incredible feeling of peace and love and goodness. I felt that David's spirit was alive. And after a few moments, the animal left. And I realized later, and actually, Elizabeth, I did not know that this was called a shared death experience until I heard you present to Ians. It was, I think, about 6 weeks ago when you talked about your shared death experience with your son. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is a shared death experience. So this is like 25 years ago. And by me realizing that it was a shared death experience, it sort of gave me a little bit more validity, gave me a name to what happened with me. Now, when I talk a little bit about crystals, crystals have energy. Quartz crystals are what powers our computer, our watches, TV, radios. And so when I took that quartz crystal from David and I took it from Edward, I believe it really helped raise my level of consciousness so that I could communicate with my brother, who I feel spirit had passed at that point. Rose quartz crystals are my favorite. They're crystals, quartz crystals that are pink. And classically, spiritually, rose quartz means love. And I always have multiple rose quartz crystals in my pocket. And so if you're looking to communicate with your child more than you already have, I encourage you to go to a rock and gem shop and look for some rose quartz crystals, or be mindful of whatever crystal is drawing you. And with intention, express your desire and express love. And I do firmly believe that the crystals can help raise our energy and help us communicate with our loved ones. 6 weeks after David had passed, I'm running my private practice, rehabilitation practice, and I was filled with despair. I think everything in life is positive. I could find nothing positive about the fact that my brother had passed. And I was riding my horse through a Christmas tree farm. And when our heart is so filled with grief, it's very hard for our loved ones to communicate with us because it's a denser energy. When they're living in the afterlife, it's a much clearer, lighter form of energy. And so I opened up my heart just a little bit because it was a beautiful day. It was the first time that I actually experienced a little bit of joy. David passed on October 1st. This was middle of November. Icicles were sparkling from the trees, rainbows were around, and I said, "Thank you, universe, for a beautiful day." I closed my eyes, and there was my brother. He was in human form, wearing a black and red plaid flannel shirt, dungarees, and sandals. And I started to talk with him because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. And I realized after a second, I could just send thought. And he was great, and I was great. It was absolutely incredible. And so many of us want to talk directly with our loved ones that have passed, with our children, but we don't have to talk. We can share thought. As long as we really do believe that we are sharing thought, it helps to believe. It helps it to happen. I looked beside David, and they were my grandparents, Bessie and Abe Dole, holding hands like they always did. They had passed 10 years ago. There's Edward, and he had passed 6 months ago. My friend Holly, who had passed 20 years ago in a motor vehicle accident. And this was another realization for me that life is eternal. What I wanted to do was do this again. I had no idea how it happened. And so this is the mid-1990s. David passed in 1995, and the internet was just happening. So we didn't really have the internet. So I went to the library. I was looking for a teacher, but I didn't have any words. I didn't know what happened to me. I learned later what happened to me is called a spiritual transformative experience. But I didn't know that at the time. So I went walking up and down the corridors in the library, and I think I expected a book to fall out, and that would be the book, and that did not happen. And so I went to a health food store, and I looked at the bulletin board, and I tried to see if something was resonating, and it wasn't. And I'm the type of person that makes things happen or tries to make things happen. And for the first time, one of the first times in my life, I asked. And it's important because we do have guides and angels and spirits and our loved ones that want to help us, but we do need to ask because we have free will on this earth. And I asked for a teacher. A couple of weeks later, a friend of mine, Dr. Amy Carroll, who's an occupational therapist, she was on my staff at the time. She came in and she said, "Becky, how are you doing?" And I shared that I wasn't doing very well. I couldn't understand it. It made no sense. I certainly was not telling her about any of these things that had happened. And she said, "I met somebody that I think you'd like." And I'm like, "Well, who's that?" And she said, she says, she's called a shaman. And I said, "A shaman? What's a shaman?" And she said, "Well, I'm not really sure, but I believe a shaman believes that all natural items have energy. And she lives in Reading, Pennsylvania. Now, Reading is an urban town. It's an urban city, really. And I thought, because I had read all these books, I mean, I had read about shamans, but they lived in Brazil and Peru, and I couldn't believe there was a shaman in a city that was like 40 minutes away from me. And she said, you know, Becky, she also communicates with people that have passed on. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is what I need. And her name's Nancy Ariel. She has unfortunately passed over. I do hear from her all the time. But I went and I apprenticed with Nancy for 3 to 6 hours a year and had a wonderful time and learned how to continue communicating with my brother and all sorts of spiritual entities and tons of other people. It was really quite spectacular. So when you're looking for a teacher, I encourage you to trust your gut. You know, trust your instincts. Find somebody that you like, that resonates with you, and trust yourself. During the time that I was apprenticing with Nancy, I learned Reiki. And Reiki, for those of you that may not be as familiar with Reiki, Reiki is a form of energy. It's a natural energy healing modality. It's called a complementary modality. And the concept about Reiki is that we use our own energy in order to help ourselves heal, in order to help ourselves relieve ourselves of grief, to help us feel better. And so you can learn Reiki in one day, which I thought, how can something so valid be learned in one day? But there was an occupational therapist that was teaching Reiki 1 and Reiki 2, and that's really all you need. You can learn how to do Reiki just with one day, but Reiki 2, you can learn how to send it long distance. So I learned Reiki, questioned it for a couple of years, and 10 years later became a Reiki master. Then became a Reiki master teacher, and in 2015, it was 5 years ago, I decided to see if I could teach it to medical professionals. And I submitted a proposal to the American Occupational Therapy Annual Conference. And lo and behold, it got accepted. And so then the next year, it's a blind review. I submitted for Reiki 1 and for Reiki 2, and that got accepted. And so every year since 2015, I've been teaching Reiki to medical professionals, the general public. It's really been quite wonderful to share how we can help ourselves and our clients heal, because Reiki uses our own energy. In 2017, so this was just 3 years ago, Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, called me up. And some of their faculty had taken my Reiki classes, and they said, hey, Beck, can you come and teach Reiki to our graduating students? And I said, sure, that'd be great. And so they said, well, we're going to partner with the Pennsylvania Pittsburgh chapter. And so can you do the class again and teach the local medical community? And I'm like, yes. So within 1 weekend, 70 people were trained in Reiki. I teach 6-hour courses. And the reason I'm saying this is because 20% had after-death communication experiences. 15 people who had hardly ever known even the word Reiki, they had initial after-death communication experiences. And I thought, wow, this is actually pretty interesting. Because when I do Reiki, I get it. But when people who've never done Reiki before have their first initial or continuing after-death communication experiences, I thought, this is totally awesome. The next year, I do a lot of work volunteering with hospice, and a group of our Reiki master teachers, we went to a group called Lily Deal. I don't know if you've ever been to Lily Deal community, but it's in Lily Deal, New York. It was formed in 1879, I believe, and it's the first spiritualist assembly. And what Lily Deal is known for is it's a community of mediums and psychics. And so I went to this Lily Deal community, and they have a healing temple. And you can go to the healing temple, I think it's at 10 o'clock in the morning, and there are 10 to 12 Reiki practitioners providing Reiki. And I thought, okay, there is something to this Reiki that it does facilitate after-death communication. If I have it, Duquesne, people that attended that program there can get it, Lily Deal. And the next year, last year, I presented an after-death communication course at Lily Deal, which was astounding. I couldn't believe that I was doing this at Lily Deal, and it actually works. And it's been really fun to share that process, that When we raise our vibrational energy, because our energy on earth is dense, when we raise it through the use of crystals or through the use of Reiki, it does help our loved ones in the afterlife communicate easier with us. Reiki is also considered unconditional love. And I love that fact because love is the strongest emotion there is. Elizabeth was saying that I was honored and am honored to be in the Life to Afterlife, the Healers movie. And a friend of mine, Lilia Samoilo, called me up. It was just a couple of months ago. And she said, "Hey, Beck, would you like to be in a film?" And I'm like, "A film?" I had never, ever thought about being in a film. And she says, Craig McMahon, and he's the fellow that did the film for Helping Parents Heal, his Life to Afterlife series. He just completed a component of his Life to Afterlife series called The Healers. And so I'm one of 11 healers that's in this film, and it's available on Vimeo. You can rent it for $1.95, or you can purchase it for $6.95. And so if you're interested in this healing energy modality, it's really a good film to introduce you to what is energy, what's energy healing, how does Reiki work, can Reiki be done in hospitals, things like that. So you can just Google Vimeo at Life to Afterlife, The Healers, and you'll get it. Or you can go to my website. That's just my name. And there's the link for that too. When we're communicating with our loved ones in the afterlife, essentially what we're doing is we're in a meditative state. And for a long time, I thought meditation was the classic lotus position where your legs are crossed and your palms are up on your knees, and you have a lovely mantra that you say. When I was learning that first year how to communicate with my brother from my Nancy, my teacher, I was doing deep breathing. And she said to me after about 4 months, she goes, "You know, Becky, you're meditating," which I had no idea that I was meditating. But I would like to do a little bit, just a very short meditation with you all right now, if that's okay with you. And I also would like to say, if I ever say anything that doesn't resonate well, trust yourself and disregard what I say. We are here on earth because of us, not because of what other people want us to do. It's our own journey. And so I'm going to encourage you to do a few things, but if you don't want to do it, it's totally fine because it's your life. So what I'd like to do is to encourage you to uncross your legs, uncross your arms, and close your eyes if it feels right. Take a deep breath. Breathe in peace and let go any type of anxiety you may have. Take another deep breath and breathe in joy. And let go any type of fear or anxiousness that may come around you. Breathe in love. Breathe in love for yourself, love for your child that's in the afterlife. And keep breathing nice and slowly, nice and deeply, breathing in that life. Imagine your child is with you. Imagine that you see your child. You see his or her face, and you're sending love. Send that love in a golden white light. Send it direct to your child and receive the love that is being sent back to you. Surround yourself with white light, golden, beautiful white light, and keep sharing that love, sending the love, receiving the love. Feel the peace that surrounds you, hopefully surrounds you. Keep taking nice, deep breaths. Send that love and receive that love. I'm going to hit a chime that signals that this is over, but when I hit the chime, you don't want to open your eyes yet. You want to open your eyes slowly and with what I call soft eyes. Just open your eyes instead of popping them open. express gratitude to your loved one in the afterlife. Slowly open your eyes. Come on back. Come on back. I hope that felt comforting to you, and I hope you were able to share your love and maybe even feel the love from your loved one. I always find it harder to meditate inside a building rather than going outside. It's much easier, in my opinion, to meditate outside and find yourself a tree that feels really good and maybe lean against the tree. There's a new technique, there's a new modality that's come into the United States, and it's called forest bathing. And forest bathing is when you're being mindful in the forest, because we know that nature is very healing, whether it's the forest or the ocean or whatever, it's very healing. And what forest bathing is when we have no plan. We just go into nature, we go into the forest, and we are being present. Now, it's interesting to me that forest bathing started in Japan, which is actually where the current form of Reiki done by Dr. Makai Usui started. That also started in Japan. And in Japan, they actually have formal forest bathing experiences, and they're doing research on the stress enzyme called cortisol. So they're looking at how stressed we are when we start forest bathing and when we end forest bathing, and they do it by putting a little white ticker tape underneath our tongue. Go to Japan, you may find this happening. And they put a little white ticker tape under your tongue, and they're checking for that cortisol stress enzyme. And after 2 hours, which is the average time for just being mindful in the forest without a plan, looking and expressing awe. At the end of the forest bathing experience, they're putting a little white ticker tape under your tongue again, and they're finding statistically significant results by spending just 2 hours in the forest. You know, sometimes people say to me, you know, I can't meditate. I have too many thoughts going through my head. How do I get them out of my head? And there's a variety of techniques to use, but one that I've found effective is to imagine that there's a balloon tied onto your wrist. And if you can't get those thoughts out of your head, see if you can send them into the balloon. They won't go away. They're tied to your wrist. You can let the balloon go and it's not going to go far. But it's a way to house your thoughts. Or if that's not as effective, acknowledge the thoughts, thank them for being there, and then try to let them go and keep breathing deeply. When our loved ones pass, they're very interested in sending us signs and symbols that they are around, that they're living, that they still are alive. Keep yourself aware of signs and symbols that may remind you of your loved one. Oftentimes, small animals like birds, dragonflies, butterflies may behave differently. They may come right up to you and you think, oh my gosh, what is happening here? And pause for a minute. Pause and see if that energy that you're feeling reminds you of your loved one. And if it does, express gratitude and express love. And then you're going to think, I'm just making this up. Of course, that's not them, but it oftentimes usually is. Numbers are a very common way for our loved ones to communicate with us, whether it's a license plate or a special series of numbers that we may see. There's lots of information on the internet about cardinals. Cardinals are a very bright common sign that are used by our loved ones in the afterlife to show that they're around. A friend of mine's son passed about a year ago last week, and she was very despondent, and she had her video on, and she asked her son to send her a sign, and she received orbs. These are the little white dots that are on your slide. She received a number of orbs that were floating through her video, and oftentimes orbs represent signs from our loved ones. Lights may go on and off, the TV may go on and off, radio shows or radio songs that remind us of our loved ones often appear. So when that happens, thank them. Just say thank you, and share your love, and they'll know that it's been received. In 2 days, there's a wonderful conference. The International Association of Near-Death Studies annual conference is online for the first time ever. And it's the philosophy of International Association of Near-Death Studies is very similar to Helping Parents Heal. People that have had a near-death experience, or what I had, a similar transformative experience, believe in the afterlife, believe we can communicate with our loved ones in the afterlife. And so there are over 60 speakers that are going to be presenting on their near-death experience, or their spiritual transformative experience, or their shared death experience, or their after-death communication. I encourage you to check it out. Suzanne Giesman, who I'm sure is pretty well known to you all, is going to be one of the keynotes. Brian Smith, who's on the Helping Parents Heal board, is going to be a moderator. I'm delighted to be presenting on Sunday as the first speaker, From Chaos to Healing, Spiritual Help During a Pandemic. And then later on Sunday, I'm delighted to moderate a shared death and after-death communications panel. You can also get the recordings, and so you can check it out by going to iands.org, and you'll see the whole virtual conference. So I hope to see you this weekend. You know, it took me 20 years to find the courage to share my journey. I'm pretty well known in the occupational therapy community, and I actually thought people would think I had lost my mind. So finally, 5 years ago, I sold my business, and I decided to get my book published, and it was published by She Writes Press, Changemaker: How My Brother's Death Woke Up My Life. And I have to say, I published it with some trepidation. 6 months after it came out, I was in the whole rainforest, and I didn't even know we had a rainforest in the United States, but it's part of Olympic National Park, and it's in Washington. And I was in whole rainforest, and I got this email, and it said, "Congratulations, Changemaker has won 3 National Book Awards. Can you please come to the Book Expo of America in New York City and pick them up?" And I thought, oh my gosh, after-death communication is hitting the mainstream. And I was so excited, and it subsequently has won a couple more awards, which has just thrilled me that our realization that the afterlife is real is hitting the mainstream. And you can get Changemaker all over the place, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, indie bookstores, or whatever. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about after-death communication, I do one-to-one coaching, I do book club discussions, teach Reiki, provide Reiki, and speak all over the place on after-death communication. This fall, in October, I'm so excited. I'm presenting a worldwide course on after-death communication. Discover unique skills to continue your connection with your deceased loved ones. And this is going to start mid-October, and it's an hour and a half a week. And then there'll be a private Facebook community and lots of little activities and 7 weeks of learning how to do this. And you can learn it with a live group. And so I'm really excited that that's happening. And if you miss a session, all the sessions are recorded. So I'm delighted to share that. And you can just let me know if you're interested. Go onto my website, which is just my name. I realize my name is challenging, Rebecca Austill-Clausen. And shoot me an email or whatever and say, hey, sign up for my newsletter or whatever you like, and you'll receive more information. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for any questions you have. I am very interested in supporting you in whatever way I can. You know, I talked about some of the things that I do, but many people do these. And find somebody that you like, that you can learn from, and avail yourself of the opportunities that Helping Parents Heal has, or that's available in our universe. So feel free to ask me anything you want. I'm all yours.
Thank you so much. This has been so wonderful. Is it okay if I take this off, so we can see you again?
Sure.
Okay, wonderful. So now, hopefully, when you speak, let me go ahead and pin you so that we have you always pinned. There we go. So anyway, that's amazing. And I find it fascinating to know that Reiki can help us communicate with our loved ones in spirit. And I'm like you. I have taken Reiki 1 and 2, and every once in a while I use it, but it's not something that I have used a lot, although I now believe that I need to learn more about it and be able to use it more. And it is an amazing, I've seen so many things that have happened through Reiki on this journey, and realizing that one of those could be communicating with Morgan and Chelsea, as well as all of our kids. But also, I think it's fascinating about the rose quartz. I didn't realize that I've always heard that amethyst is a really good way to open our third eye and to be able to communicate, but I didn't realize how important rose quartz is. Let's see, does anybody have any important questions for Becky? Because let's see, one of the things I wanted to say before we go forward, though, is that we had someone come and speak specifically about orbs, and she wrote a book about all of the orb photos that she's taken of her son since he passed, and it's pretty amazing. And it's exciting for you to enumerate all of these signs that we talk about too all the time. Marcia is asking, can you speak upon your experience with your brother when you meditate by the lake at one of your, at one of your conferences? So when you were meditating by the lake at one of your conferences, I guess you had already spoken about this. Is this something that you could maybe speak to us about?
Is it Masha?
It is Marcia. Oh, Marie. No, it's Marie Garcia. Sorry, it's Marie.
I communicate with my brother all the time, and so I'm not exactly sure when you're chatting about doing it by a lake. So if you can clarify that a little bit, but I'll be glad to expound on this as well.
So let's see, Marie, maybe I could unmute you if you'd like. I just also want to say while I'm looking, oh, it was in your book.
Oh, it's in my book. Oh, okay. Oh, great. Oh, I'm glad you read that. Thanks so much. Gosh, it has been absolutely incredible to have continuing. Oh, I know which one you're talking about. I was like, no, what are you talking about? I believe this is the scene that you're talking about. I just came back from Cape Cod last week, actually. And I believe this is I was thinking about this scene by the lake when I was traveling to Cape Cod. Oh gosh, it was a couple of years after my brother passed. Actually, because Changemaker is the first year after he passed. It must have been that first year. I'm in the car, and David came to me in the car, and we're in Connecticut driving to Massachusetts, and he said, Becky, I'd like to come with you camping when we camp with our family and friends. Is that all right? And I said, yes. And he said, if it gets too much, tell me. And I said, yes. And if I get too much for you, feel free to tell me. And so David stayed with me. It was incredible. He was inside me for probably 3 or 4 days. And one of the first things that he wanted to do is to go swimming, because David's Pisces, I'm Pisces. He had he was unable to go swimming the last 2 years of his life. And he had a life-giving shunt in his side. And so he wanted to go swimming. Now, we've been camping at the same state park this was 64 years in a row. So I pretty much know this state park. David led me down this path that I had never been. And it's very interesting to have this message in your head and to trust. And I'm like, okay, I'll go, I'll follow your direction. So I followed him down, and we went down to a lake. And David, I had never been to this particular component of the lake. And David said, I would love to go swimming. And so with mindful intention, I walked into the water. And so David's inside me, and I could feel his pleasure at being able to feel the water, to feel the purity, to feel the coolness. This is what's called a kettle pond where I was. It's formed by glacier, so it's very clear with no inside or exit for the water. So it's just water, and it's beautiful, beautiful water. So David's feeling this water, and the wonderful bubbling joy that occurred inside me when I dove into the water, and David actually felt the water all around him. He felt it through me. I felt his joy. It was incredible. And so I was thinking when I was there, this year, I'm like, my gosh, I need to find out where this place is. And so I actually was able to discover where this path was that David took me. And it was a magnificent experience. Now, when a spirit comes, particularly if it's one that you know, then usually it's fine. But you always want to make sure that you trust what you're receiving. And I trusted David explicitly. He stayed after we went in the water. He stayed for another day or two. And then we started to sing, because my family sings, and we started to sing, and it got a little bit emotional for David, and he left and he didn't come back until we had finished camping. But that water experience was one of the most profound experiences I've ever had. So thank you for asking about that.
Well, it's interesting because Babette is asking, what does it feel like when David is inside of you? Could you maybe expand on that just a little bit?
Sure. Now, when we receive communication from our loved ones, sometimes it's visual. So sometimes I see him. Most people are not able to see, and it's tricky because we're so bound by our eyes that it's wonderful if we can see, but most people feel or sense or whatever. And so for me, I hear, like that's what happens most of the time, is that I hear David. And it's like it has David's voice for me. This is what happens, is it has David's voice, and I am in a little bit of a state of 80% present, 20% not present. That's when I'm actually doing something. When I'm in meditation, what I do when I'm in meditation is I actually do what's called automatic writing. And that's how I communicate most of the time with loved ones, is that I do it automatically. And so then when that happens, when either David's inside me communicating and I'm typing it down, or writing it or whatever, it's a knowing, it's a trust that what you're hearing in your head is actually real. And it is, in the beginning, a little disconcerting, because you think, I must be making this up. Like, I really wondered if I was schizophrenic a number of times. And in my book, Changemaker, I say that a number of times. Am I schizophrenic? But it feels right. And that's when it gets to trusting ourselves and trusting our gut. So sometimes I get a little bit of a tingling. Sometimes I get a little bit of it might be a little bit hot, but it's a wonderful feeling. It feels like love and joy and peace and happiness all at the same time. When I'm communicating with my brother, that's how it feels. It's a good question.
That sounds beautiful. It sounds the way that I always feel when he hugs me from the inside, the same kind of thing. Basha is saying, you are helping me to explain experiences of connection with my son, where I'm active doing the things that he loved to do so much, and we shared together. So I think that that's really fascinating, that she's being able to identify, just like this shared death experience that I was explaining to you. Obviously, Dana is saying, wow, this is amazing. Lindsay's saying, I spend a lot of time at our Sweet River and in the woods. It is such a peaceful place. I feel my son with me. Should I actually meditate to have more of an experience?
Good question. First of all, do whatever feels right. So that's my statement. Do whatever feels right. There's no rules about this, but I've been teaching this for 5 years. And so I've got an idea generally about what works for the majority of people. I would encourage you, when you're in the woods or the river, any place that is outside is usually much easier, to find a place that you like, that you feel comfortable, that you feel safe, you feel protected, you feel a resonance. Trees actually have energy. And I could talk for a long time about trees, but find a tree you like and sit by it. And then I would encourage you to meditate, if you can meditate. And you don't have to have any rules about meditating. It's what we did. It's when you close your eyes and you breathe deeply and you relax, and then ask your child to be with you. And then you may feel something. You may feel a wisp of wind on your cheek, or maybe your hair starts to do something, or maybe you get a little tingling, and believe it. If you're feeling something, believe it and just say, thanks. Hey, thanks. And share your love. because the idea is that we want to get past our grief. And there's all sorts of ways to do that, which is a whole nother presentation. But we want to get past our grief. And once we can get past our grief and we're meditating and our energy is higher, it allows us to communicate easier with our loved ones. Now, 80% of after-death communication occurs in dreams. And these are special dreams. These are dreams that you remember. And you may see your loved one in a dream, and it's a real dream. Because ideally, the philosophy is what happens is our physical body remains present on earth, but our spirit, our soul leaves our body. And our loved ones in the afterlife can meet. And that's what happens in a dream. So yes, bottom line, I encourage you to try meditating in the woods. There's a statistic, and it's something like, there's all these positive ions in the woods. It's something like 10,000 positive ions are in a cubic centimeter when we're in the forest. And when we're inside, like in an office building, there's 100 positive ions in a cubic centimeter. So it's so much more healing to be outside and meditating and asking for that communication.
Wow.
So I hope that helps.
That's amazing. So you need to have lots of Himalayan salt lamps in your house if you're trying if you're trying to meditate in your house. Nancy is asking, do you hear his voice directly?
Yes, I do. But sometimes, well, actually I do. And that's just me. I mean, that's just, I hear things a lot. Some people don't. You know, some people might just have a feeling. But yes, I do hear him. It's really quite extraordinary and healing to be able to continue communicating with our loved ones. For me, it's totally changed my perspective about life. I mean, we don't die. Like, I absolutely 1,000,000% believe that we don't die. And to be able to have a continuing relationship with our loved ones while we're here on earth and they're in the afterlife is really quite astounding. And it's fun. And it's a grief relieving experience. And you can learn it, because I had no idea how to do this. If I can learn this, anybody can. And that's my philosophy. Anyone can learn how to do this.
Well, and you probably would not be doing what you're doing if your brother hadn't passed. There would have been no way that you would have known any of this existed, and you wouldn't have cared, probably, right? So Jody's asking, what about the beach? And Suzanne is also asking about that. So could you tell us about the beach?
Sure. Thank you for asking. I often forget the beach because I love the woods, but I also love the beach. The beach and the ocean and the river and the water are fantastic. It's a wonderful place to go and be by yourself and look at the gulls and look at the birds and listen to the water. It is so healing to be by the beach. It's whatever natural location you feel the most comfortable in is the best for after-death communication. There's no right or wrong, but the ocean especially has excellent healing ions and healing from the inside out. You know, first we have to heal our grief, and we're always going to be sad. Like I was actually practicing this and I got a little emotional. I'm like, gosh, Becky, this is 25 years. And you know, we're always going to have that sadness, but it's okay. Like, it's okay. And so wherever you feel most comfortable to communicate in a loving manner with your child that has passed on, go for it. The beach is absolutely fabulous.
Well, Suzanne is saying maybe water is a conduit. I think that
yes.
may very well be. And especially if you had that incredible experience with your brother by diving into the water that way. Paula is saying, my son just passed on June 2nd, 2020. I have signs and hear from him, but I still cry at times. Isn't it normal to still have sadness from a very hard trauma?
Oh, Paula, I am so sorry. It is absolutely normal and appropriate. You must have grief. If we hold it in, it's not going to resolve. I am so sorry. It's close for you. And the fact that you do receive signs and you do have experiences is wonderful. You will always have grief. You will always have it. But I'm talking about the grief that is so deep that we can't feel anything but grief. And hopefully when you receive signs and when you receive symbols, you're able to let yourself acknowledge that your child is alive. He's alive. And he's sending you signs. And he's saying, I'm okay, Mom. I'm okay. And so again, my very deepest sympathy. And we don't want to let go of all the grief, but you want to be able to at least resolve it a little bit so that we can then facilitate that communication. And so thank you for sharing. And again, my deepest, very deepest sympathy.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And Sissy's saying, and this is something that I was kind of wondering myself, I'm surprised our loved ones that have passed have physical earthly desires like your brother's desire to swim. I just assumed that in spirit, all of their desires are met.
You know, that's really very interesting. I was surprised about that as well. I'd like to share a little bit of a side comment on that. My brother-in-law passed, and I am actually quite comfortable and good, for lack of a better word, about communicating with people when they're passing or when they have just passed. And his name's Dick. And so when Dick passed, I said, and I typed this, but I heard it in my head as well. I said, hey, Dick, how is it in the afterlife? And you know what he said? It was so interesting to me. He said, well, Becky, I am filled with light. The entire afterlife is filled with the most incredible, beautiful light. He said, what you're seeing on earth is a refraction of the light. What I'm seeing is the light with all its glory. I didn't know what the word refraction meant. And so I looked it up and I was sort of wondering if it was real, and it is real. And what refraction means is a reflection. And so we're seeing a reflection of what people see in the afterlife. Now, there's a lot of books. There's a lot of channeled books about the afterlife and what the afterlife is like. And people can create their own life in the afterlife. And so they can create an earthly heaven if they want, with their houses and with trees and with lakes and universities and all that jazz. But what they miss on earth is the emotion. They miss the emotion, and they're missing that physical feeling. And my brother had not been able to go swimming for 2 years, and he used to swim all the time, and he just wanted to feel that again. And in order to feel it, he needed my permission, which he received. So it is interesting that even when we pass, we may still have earthly desires. That's an interesting question.
Well, I also, I think that a lot of times people say that they love for us to cook the food that they love the most because they love to eat it and they can taste it through us and they can experience, for instance, if we travel, if we go to all of the places that they love, they experience that through us as well. Of course, they can fly there in an instant, they can see it themselves, but being able to experience it with someone that they love, I'm sure is a different experience for them. Bren is saying, I would love to take your Reiki course. Can you give us information on upcoming opportunities? Do you have any that are upcoming?
Thanks. I do. Actually, I've got a whole weekend. It's not for a while. It's in March. And I'm so used to doing Reiki courses at universities, at New Age stores, at conferences or whatever, that I'm doing one at Westchester University, which is in Pennsylvania, in March, which is a distance away. And it's called Reiki Immersion. And it's on Friday is Reiki 1, on Saturday is Reiki 2, on Sunday is Reiki Master. And I've had this set up for 6 months. And I'm starting to think, gosh, I'm hoping I'm going to be able to do this in a safe manner with this COVID production happening. And so if I can't do it safely, I'm going to be doing it online. And so after I finish teaching this after-death communication course this fall, I'm going to look and make a decision as to whether Reiki Immersion in March is going to be able to be in person or online. But I can come out and travel and teach Reiki any place. It's just that right now, people aren't really traveling, including me. And so so feel free, you're welcome to email me. I have a complimentary HealthWorks address. It's becky@comphealthworks.com. And I can keep you in touch with what kind of Reiki programs are going. And it'd be fun. It'd be very fun to teach you Reiki. I also wanted to say there are other Reiki people around. Like, I don't mean to say, hey, you must take it from me. I do have a specialty in after-death communication, but shoot, it does happen. And so, yeah, feel free to keep me in touch, and check my website. My website has my events, and it has Reiki immersion, and hopefully we'll be able to do that in person, but if not, it'll be online.
Well, can Reiki be taught online? Is it something that you can, so you will perhaps be doing this for Westchester University online. Okay, great.
It's, in my opinion, like I do group Reiki. I mean, that's what I love. I love doing the large groups because there's all this experiential practice. And so the way I teach it is that we have at least 4 to 5 different partners that you give Reiki to, you share Reiki, and then you exchange Reiki. And you do that with 4 to 5 different people. And so you get it. Like, people get it. And to do it online, it's trickier because you're doing it more on yourself. The first thing you learn is how to do it on yourself. But you want to be able to practice it with some other people. And with the COVID production, there isn't as many people to practice it with, but it can be done, and it is effective, and it does work. And you can send it long distance, and healing works long distance. It's really incredible.
That's wonderful. I have one question here too about whether or not you're also a medium. Are you not just are you able to communicate with other, not just your brother, but other people who have passed? Is that right?
Yes, I am. I can do that. And what my specialty is teaching you. That's what I love. Like, I love teaching you how to do it. But I got an email today. It was a fellow, gosh, I think he was like I don't know where he was. I think he was like South Africa. And he was asking about his mother. And so I was emailing him back, and his mother came right through. And so I described the mother and described what she looked like and described what she said, and that she was at peace and she was sending him love. And he had asked a couple of questions, and it's really quite wonderful to be able to share that with someone who was asking, how is my mother? How is my mother? Bottom line, I love for people to learn how to do it on their own. But yes, I can do that.
That's wonderful. Well, we are running out of time, but we have other questions, and I know that you're willing to come back and speak to us. Is that right?
Oh, I'd love to.
You'd be willing to do that? So
I'd love to.
So
and feel free to, I'm sorry to interrupt.
You didn't no, go ahead.
In the meantime, if I didn't get questions answered, like, email me or call me, 610-363-7446, or again, email Becky@comp, health, HEALTH, works, WORKS. We can do Zoom calls. I mean, I'll help you. I'll answer anything you want. My mission on earth is to teach people that we can communicate with our loved ones. We do live forever. And I'm so appreciative, Elizabeth, of chatting with you and everybody that's here. I appreciate so much the opportunity. I send you my deepest sympathy and my deepest support and my deepest encouragement to know that you are not alone. We do not die alone. We can communicate with our loved ones, and you are absolutely wonderful. And Helping Parents Heal is a fabulous organization. The support you have is outstanding. And so whatever I can do, I'm very glad to do.
Well, thank you. And everyone is writing about how encouraging you are, how wonderful it is to have you. And so we definitely are going to have you back if you're willing to come. And
I'd love to.
Not only that, but you're going to have to send all of that information to me that I can put on the YouTube video so that people will have that in the information so that they can follow it. Any of the upcoming events that you'd like to put in there as well, we'll put it on the YouTube video as well so that everybody can see this. And thank you so much. And Pam is saying that you live right by her. So Pam, you're very lucky.
Well, no, I'm lucky. So Pam, where's Pam live?
Pam, where do you live? Can you type in the box where you live? Let's see. I don't know. I might be able to find her and let's see. I don't know. Pam, let's see. Where are you, Pam? Let me see if I can find you.
Normally I travel, like I'm on the road 6 months a year. I just haven't been with this COVID production, but you know, I travel a lot and teach a lot, and it's a blast. So to have somebody close is really, really fun.
So she must live somewhere near Pittsburgh, but I'm or
And I'm
Philadelphia.
outside of Philly. That's
Yeah,
about
sorry.
But whatever,
Okay.
that doesn't matter.
But in any case, as I say, we'll have you back if that's okay with you.
Love it.
And people can think about their questions. We'll make sure that we also put your book on the website so that everyone knows about it, and maybe everyone can read it before the next time so that they can ask any questions that they have as well. It's so wonderful to have you. Have a wonderful time at the IONS conference. It's
Yes.
exciting that you're going to be such a big part of it next weekend.
This weekend, 2 days.
Okay, this weekend, yes.
Yeah.
So it's the 14th through the 16th, exactly. So we did put information about that both on the site as well as in our newsletter so that people know about it as well. And hopefully a lot of people will be attending that. And again, thank you. And what we do at the end is that we have everybody unmute yourself and say goodbye and thank you to
Thank you,
Becky.
Becky. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Blessings to you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I live in Doylestown.
Greatly appreciated.
Lives in Doylestown. We found out.
Doylestown. No, the chat was disabled. I live in Doylestown.
Yay! Doylestown's excellent, 40 minutes away. I'm in Downingtown.